Hi guys, it's Jess. Welcome and welcome back to the Not Carrie Bradshaw YouTube channel. In this video, I'm fulfilling a Patreon patron request to discuss the major themes surrounding Interview with the Vampire, the series, season 1. I'm just saying out right now, as much as I love this show, I will not be getting another streaming service to watch season 2. Don't nobody need AMC Plus. Who is that for? Season 1 is on Netflix, and when they drop season 2, we can talk about it, but I will not be paying for another damn streaming service. They have me by the balls. I can't even do it. So shout out to my patron for requesting this conversation because I really loved this series. So let's dive right in. If you are new here, I'm just come right out and say, I do not love this era of reboots that we're in where people are just mining existing IP. I feel like studio execs are like, well, we made money on this before, we can make money on it again. Let's just drill down and find out how much more money we can make. No, thank you. Keep your greed. However, I can make space for a reboot or a reimagining where it makes sense, where it's well done, where it adds some different layers and color, pun intended, to the story. I was a huge fan of Interview with the Vampire, the movie that came out in 1994. This is based on Anne Rice's series of novels. I thought that movie was so cool when I was little. I thought Kirsten Dunst was so pretty. I was obsessed with her curly hair. And the whole time I was watching that movie, even as a kid, I was like, these niggas gay, right? It was so obvious, but they explored it more as subtext, just a thing that no one was saying. Like Lestat was obviously in love with Louis. It was, and so I appreciate that in this AMC series, it's very overt that Louis and Lestat are gay, bi. I think Lestat is more bi, Louis is gay. I am not a queer scholar. It's probably not for me to say, but that's what I think. Now, what makes this also interesting is that Louis is a Black Creole man. This series is based in New Orleans during the 1910s. And that adds, like I said, some different layers to this story. So it's not just identity, it's not just morality, it's not just religion, it's also race. And race plays a huge role in terms of like how we make up our identity. And there are still conversations even now about like how some Creole people feel they're Creole first and Black second, or some of them don't want to be referred to as Black, and that's its own thing. But Louis DuPont de Lac, okay, played by Jacob Anderson, aka Grey Worm from Game of Thrones, he identifies as a Black man, and we love to see it. So he is a part of a family, a well-to-do family in New Orleans, like I said, in the 1910s. Louis was in the army, came back, and his family had made their money in sugar, but his father, who had since passed away, wasn't great with the money. So he runs a brothel in an area called Storyville, which I did not know was a real place. Storyville was a real place in New Orleans that was kind of like the red light districts. It was this place where they said, okay, prostitution isn't legal, but we gonna let it be okay here in this little regulated part of the city. And, we're gonna have these certain ordinances. And it was more so giving the energy of, we don't want you to do it, but if you're going to do it, we'd rather you do it in the house where we can watch and make sure that everyone's safe, like that kind of energy. Now, Louis, he's very close with his family. He has a sister who's engaged to be married, and he has a brother named Paul who has some mental health issues, right? I'm not sure if Paul is schizophrenic or bipolar, or if he exists in this realm of like religious psychosis, because I know, just like living in New York, a lot of times when I see or hear people disassociating in public and they're like unhoused, maybe they're not. Anywho, they might be unmedicated or undiagnosed. And a lot of times, like, the things that I hear them say are extremely religious and or extremely political. And I'm very curious about like why people with that particular kind of disorder or mental illness go to those places. But you can imagine what it's like to be not only Black, not only trying to be a business owner, because you're still navigating the South, in Jim Crow, but you're also gay and kind of struggling with that identity and not really able to fully live in that because Black people already aren't seen as full human beings. To be Black and gay, child, ain't nobody really trying to hear that. Like, masculinity for Black men is such a nuanced and charged part of like identity that as a Black woman I can't speak to, but from what I observe, I feel like Black men are constantly trying to do so much to claim their masculinity and claim their strength in our society, sometimes to their detriment. So you get the feeling that Louis's family isn't really fully accepting of who he is, and he tries to keep up appearances, right? But you can see that Louis is somewhat of a vulnerable person in this world because even as a business owner, he still has to, they call it, kowtow, kind of like bow down to these white men in these different establishments. He still has to do the absolute most in terms of deference to them. It has to be so much yes sir and no sir, and you own a business and you make money, but you still need to stay in a nigga's place type shit. So Louis is a vulnerable person. He tries to keep up appearances as a straight man, but he is a vulnerable person because he doesn't get to be his full self. He doesn't, I don't think, really know who his full self is because there is this thing that I have observed, like as someone who, again, strives to be an ally, where Black families who are overwhelmingly socially conservative will not approve of their gay family members' quote unquote lifestyle, will not approve of their orientation. They'll think that it's a choice and, oh, well, it's like this half ass acceptance. But what they will fully accept is that person's money. I have heard so many stories of gay Black men where they are like the financial benefactor for people in their family who do not fully accept them. It's something that I have observed in church where I have watched people that identify as gay in the congregation and they serve as ushers and they sing in the choir and they serve so much to this church and they sit there and they listen to pastors condemn them for being gay. And those churches will take your gay money, but they will not affirm you as a whole person. So the relationship between like family and a Black Southern conservative, socially conservative family, and at the intersection too of this like hidden identity, again, makes Louis a vulnerable person. So when you have Lestat, this hundreds-year-old white French man, come into town and he shows Louis a whole new world, Disney, I'm not gonna sing because it's early in the morning and y'all didn't pay for that, think hijinks ensue, right? So Louis can peep that something is very different about Lestat. Like he can peep that he has this ability to get in his head and talk to him like telepathically, but he doesn't like really fully know like what's the tea with him. Like if something is off, but he's very alluring. That's one of the things about vampires that I've always found fascinating is that there's this sexual allure to them. Like people are very like tempted and like what's the word I'm looking for? People are very just under their spell. If you think back to like all the lore that you've ever seen about vampires, there is this like sexual magnetism to them. So Louis decides that he's going to bring Lestat home. So it's not only that you're Black and that you're kind of in the closet, and you work in a brothel. Your family's money, the houses they live in, is because of this brothel, right? But then you bring home this white man. You can't be bringing home a gay white man to your very traditional Black Southern family. You doing a whole lot. What's also interesting is that I think that for Paul, the veil is thin. I think that some people are just like tuned in. This is not maybe like some woo woo shit, but I think some people are very like tuned in to otherworldly things. And it could be his psychosis, and it could be that the veil is just thin for Paul. He knows that something is evil about Lestat. So they start discussing religion, and Child Lestat goes on this whole diatribe where he starts talking about, like, I don't believe in God. God wasn't enough for me when shit was going down. You can't be saying this shit in no Black Christian home. So Paul gets very upset. It becomes a whole thing. And you get the feeling that when Louis's family is talking about certain things or questioning certain things about his quote unquote lifestyle, it's not just that there's an evil presence around you, it feels like they're also talking about his sexuality. It's like this very kind of like subtext of, some may write, and I think it might be, I think the evil might be that you're gay. And there is this whole thing of praying the gay away and all these things like that. And so when so Louis's brother ends up committing suicide. During my rewatch, I couldn't watch that shit again. It made me tremendously sad. So Louis is telling this whole life story to a writer named Daniel Malloy, who, this is happening in 2020 in Dubai, child. Let me tell you how this is like a fantasy for me, like as a writer. I would love for a very interesting, normal, safe person to fly me out to a very cool location to write their life story. That is a dream of mine. So Daniel Malloy has Parkinson's. It's 2020, like during the pandemic. They've tried to recount or record Louis' life story before in like the 70s. It didn't work out. So they're trying this again. He has flown him out. He done got flew out to Dubai to discuss, you know, his life story. And what I love about Daniel Malloy as a journalist, as a writer, he asked Louis the tough questions, where it's like, is this just like a slave master kind of trope? Like, once you said you were not in love with him, another time you said that you weren't. At one point it was abusive, and then another time it's not. And what I really love is the way they discuss memory. Let me see. There is a really cool quote where he says something about like, oh yeah, allow me the odyssey of reflection. And I think the way we relate to our memory is so fascinating, because who you are today can color what your memory of past events were. And I wonder, like, if I'm huge about like the story we tell ourselves, right? Like, to like our personal lore, like the things that explain why we are the way that we are and all that stuff like that, right? And especially like if you have trauma, I would love to know how I recalled a story before I got in therapy versus how I recall it now that I'm in it and have been for years. So I'm fascinated by that part of things. It's memory and reciting and recounting all of these different aspects of Louis' life, especially because he's lived for a really long time. So after Louis' brother's suicide, Louis is obviously like very lost. His mother blames him for his brother's death. And I hate that. It reminded me of Boys in the Hood. Like, Ricky's mom really didn't like Doughboy. Ricky was the star kid, and she really had like a favorite. And I feel like it was like that kind of energy of, I don't know if it's because Louis just seemed like more well adjusted and seemed like he didn't need as much. It was like check on your strong friend type vibes. Maybe he seemed like the strong child, so she didn't feel like he needed as much as Paul. And maybe he didn't. You know, a kid that has mental illness issues or is disabled in some kind of way probably does need more attention, but you can't neglect your other kids. And his sister, who he loves dearly, you know, she's gotten married and they have this wedding, and oh my God, the tap dance scene, I have to pull over to talk about that. So apparently Jacob Anderson just like learned how to tap dance, like with a piece of like, wood in like his hotel room, and like learned it over Zoom. That is amazing to me. A performer, an artist. Love that man. Always rooting for him. So again, this adds to Louis' like vulnerability. So he finds himself kind of like, I think that Lestat becomes like his refuge almost. And it occurred to me, where we're exploring these themes of identity and romantic relationships and interracial relationships, I wonder if a part of the attraction that Black people have to non-Black partners is that they don't have the weight of oppression on them. They get to navigate the world kind of, I guess it's just privilege. They get to be a little bit more free. And maybe people don't want to always come home to a person who is as weighed down as they are. I don't know. I'm trying to empathize. So Lestat turns him, and of course, shit gets hinky. Like, his family's like, something is off about you. Is this new dude that you around? I don't like it. And again, it feels like, is it because he gay, or is it because you can tell this man is a vampire that he's evil? So he ends up being shunned by his family. Then there's all these different changes happening politically and business-wise and professionally. And Louis is just like getting it from all sides, but he has Lestat. He ends up being just completely shunned from his family. They don't feel safe with him around their kids. And it's this whole thing like the sister's husband has now kind of taken his place as his mother's son. And he really doesn't have anybody. So another thing that I think about, like as a Black person from the South, is how we kind of, I don't know if everybody else did this, but I remember first learning about slavery and being so angry about it and just wishing that like our ancestors had like actual superpowers and that there was something they could have done to like fight back. I think that this series really highlights something that even if you are in some way supernatural, super powerful, whatever, racism, prejudice, that shit's more powerful. That shit is in the blood, in the soil of this country. So even though Louis has the ability to actually overpower and kill these people, the systemic things that keep us oppressed are no, like powers are no match for the system. And I remember thinking about that, like watching something like Lovecraft Country, where it really made me think about, you know, the master's tools will never bring down the master's house. It's just, it don't work like that. Even though those people are evil, like racism, prejudice, those isms are evil, your evil can't combat that evil. And I think we saw a lot of that in this series. So because Louis has lost his family, basically, he has this new like chosen family. He saves Claudia, who is this, I think that at the time that they turn her, she's 12 or 13. And this is basically Louis and Lestat's adopted daughter, and they have to teach her the ways of like being a vampire. And you can imagine, like, if you're a teenager, your body already is changing in these specific ways. So think about being frozen in puberty. Not fun. Not an age I would want to be turned at. At this point, I don't want to be turned. I don't want to live forever. I don't want to watch all the things that I know disappear and all the people who I know and love die. But if I were to be turned, this would be a good age for me. Like, I love my 30s. I've never felt or looked better, to be honest. But anywho, Claudia goes on her own journey. And something that I was thinking about is like, how does consent work for vampires? This is something that I was thinking about even in Twilight. Why y'all in high school? Why wouldn't y'all go around to different colleges or something? Or like, why be in school at all? Like, just go somewhere more remote. But like, why y'all in high school pursuing high school kids? Like, I recognize that like you're frozen in that age, but technically you're a very old person. You shouldn't be dealing with nobody like under 25, 30 probably. Like, it's an abuse of power here. So and Claudia and Lestat are beefing hard. Like, she don't really like that daddy, okay? And Louis has such a huge like moral issue in terms of like killing people. He goes back and forth. And Lestat has very little empathy for his struggle as a Black man. It's like, oh, here you go with this again. Like, you're above being a Black man. You're a vampire. And it's like, yeah, but above all else, you're Black. This is still America. Like, Lestat really isn't there. Lestat is not an ally. I tell you that, okay? Lestat is an abusive, narcissistic partner. And of course he is. He's fabulously wealthy. He's a rich white man who has like all the things that he could want. He indulges in everything that he desires. He don't have no empathy or compassion or patience for nobody. So he ends up really like beating Louis' ass, like dropping him from the sky. It's awful. And you know, Louis and Claudia like try to run away, like that whole thing. But there's really this, their dynamic really reminds me a lot of the Toni Morrison quote of how love is never a gift for the receiver, because you could be at the mercy of another person's perception or concept of what love is. And I think Lestat thinks that he loves Louis, like he thinks that this is what love is, but Louis is actually like tremendously abused by Lestat. So there's also these themes of how we um how we navigate romantic relationships at all these different intersections of identity. But then you throw in, nigga, you done turned me into a vampire. I ain't got no family. I'm trying to have a family. Like, if you care about me being happy, this is a part of what it looks like for me to be happy. So again, hijinks ensue. now, you know, Louis is living this very like fabulous life in Dubai. He and Claudia are somewhat estranged. Claudia has an incident where she like goes out into the world, and we glean that she gets sexually assaulted. That part was tough, obviously, but them trying to like stay together as this like chosen family, again, even when you choose your family, you're not free from those different kinds of like dynamics or struggles. And at like in present day, Louis gets to this place where he is finding ethical ways to consume human blood. He has like these certain servants in his like very fabulous house, and they're providing Daniel with like this top-notch care and all the things. It's a really amazing series. I highly recommend watching it. I hope that in season 2 we get more of what happened with Claudia when she went away. You know, Daniel has like her diaries and things like that, but there are these certain things that Louis wants to touch on and certain things that he doesn't. So there's also this tension between Daniel and Louis. And again, I really appreciate how Daniel calls him out on, okay, what is this though? Like, what is your dynamic with Lestat? Like, because even though the sexuality is very much presented like on the front end, there is still needing to dig through like, but what's your relationship to him? Like, what's the tea here? So I really love this series. I highly recommend it. Again, thank you to my patron for recommending that I discuss this. It's a lot of themes that like I think about as a Black person from the South, as far as like religion and mental health and identity and the way that we relate to each other and how we choose our family. So again, highly recommend. Season 1 is on Netflix. I'm gonna look for season 2. If I can find it on a streaming service that I already have, I will come back and discuss that in more detail. Thank you guys for tuning in. Bye.